The barn groaned under the weight of the storm. Rain hammered its broken roof, dripping through the rafters, striking the dirt floor in steady, merciless rhythm. A lantern swung on a rusted nail, its weak flame shuddering against the darkness, throwing shadows that seemed alive. In that corner, tied, wrists raw and bleeding, sat a young woman. Early 20s, hair-soaked, lips trembling. Her cries came muffled, bound by a rag stuffed cruelly between her teeth. She kicked weakly against the rope, but it only cut deeper, burning her skin. Narration whispered through the storm. Her screams were not carried by the wind. They were trapped here, swallowed by wood and dust, unheard by the world beyond. Bootsteps thudded across the floorboards. Her stepfather emerged from the dark, stinking of whiskey, his eyes lit with rotten cruelty. He yanked the lantern higher, letting its light reveal her terror. "You think running makes you free?" He slurred, spitting into the dirt. "You'll learn. Ain't no one coming for you. Ain't no one who cares." She shook her head desperately, tears streaking down her face. Her muffled pleas escaped around the rag. He smirked, leaned close, his foul breath filling the air. "Silent screams, girl. That's all you are." His hand slapped across her cheek, hard, leaving it red and stinging. She winced, eyes closing against the pain. Then, with a cruel laugh, he stepped back into the storm, slamming the barn door shut. Darkness swallowed her whole. The lantern hissed as rain leaked onto its glass. Shadows stretched long across her face, making her look more ghost than living soul. Her body trembled from cold, from fear, from exhaustion. Narration deepened, heavy as the storm itself. Every drop of rain was a clock, ticking her toward the end. Every groan of the timbers was a hymn for the forgotten. And in that silence, her soul cried louder than her voice ever could. The ropes creaked with her struggling. Her wrists bled, her eyes lifted toward the rafters, where holes in the roof let the storm pour through, each drop catching the faint lantern light like falling shards of glass. Her heart pounded, breaking against the silence. She prayed for a sound, a voice, a miracle. But all that answered was thunder. Hours bled away inside that barn. The storm outside had softened, but the night within grew colder, heavier. Rats scurried through the hay, their beady eyes glinting in the dim lantern glow. Each scratch of their claws echoed in her ears, sharp and mocking. The young woman's head drooped forward, her strength draining like water through a sieve. Her wrists were raw meat now, skin torn where rope had bitten too deep. Her breath came shallow, chest heaving with every effort to stay alive. Narration settled over the silence like dust. She was left not to live, not even to die swiftly, but to rot, to fade into the wood and straw as if she had never been born at all. From beyond the barn walls, faint voices carried. The outlaw stepfather sat in town, laughing loud at a poker table, boasting of his cruelty. Taught her good. "Little fool won't be running off no more," he bragged, glass slamming on wood, men around him laughing at the sickness of it. Back inside, the girl tried to raise her head, tried to shift the gag with her tongue. Her voice cracked against the cloth, a strangled sound, no louder than the rat's squeaks. She twisted once more, the rope cutting deeper, her whole body shaking from the pain, her knees buckled, legs folding beneath her. She hit the dirt hard. Dust rose around her face, sticking to her tears, to the blood on her wrists. The lantern flickered, flame shrinking, shadows crawling closer. Every second, the narrator intoned, was a nail hammered into her coffin. Every breath stolen by silence, every heartbeat echoing the truth. No one was coming. Her vision blurred. She stared at the wooden rafters above, where the storm's leftovers dripped steady from a broken beam. Each drop struck the ground like a ticking clock. Tick, tick, tick. Her body slumped sideways, too weak to fight anymore. A soft whimper escaped her gag, quieter than the wind pressing against the old barn walls. For a moment, her eyes closed. Darkness pressed in, heavy, suffocating, final, and still. Her heart refused to stop. A silent plea rose in her chest, desperate, trembling, unheard. A plea that would somehow, against all odds, carry beyond these walls before it was too late. The storm had thinned to a drizzle by the time his horse came trotting down the muddy trail. The rancher, a man weathered by 50 hard years, sat tall in the saddle, lantern swinging in his hand. He had spent the night searching for strays scattered by the thunder, unaware fate was guiding him toward something far heavier than lost cattle. His boots hit the ground outside the barn, mud splashing. The horse snorted, uneasy, ears twitching at some sound inside. The rancher frowned, lifting the lantern higher, its glow catching the barn's warped boards. A muffled whimper cut through the silence, faint, trembling, almost lost to the rain. He froze. His chest tightened. Slowly he shoved the barn door open. The hinges screamed, and lantern light spilled across the dirt floor. There she was. The young woman lay slumped against the post, rope biting cruelly into her wrists, face pale and streaked with tears. Her eyes fluttered open at the light, wide with fear and disbelief. Narration swelled, low and grave. He had seen storms tear down fences, seen wolves strip cattle to bone. But never had he seen a cruelty so raw as this. A life bound and left to die in silence. He dropped to one knee beside her, lantern set down in the straw. His knife flashed in the dim light, blade pressed quick against the rope. "Easy, girl," he whispered, voice rough but steady. "You're safe now." The rope snapped. Her arms collapsed forward, limp and trembling. She fell into him, too weak to hold herself up. He caught her against his chest, heart pounding with a mix of anger and sorrow. Her voice cracked, little more than a whisper against his shirt. "Don't let him. Send me back," his jaw tightened, eyes burning. He pulled the gag from her mouth, brushing damp hair from her face. "No one's taking you anywhere," he swore. "Not while I'm breathing." He wrapped her gently in his coat, lifting her into his arms. As he carried her out, the lantern behind them sputtered and died, leaving the barn swallowed in darkness. The storm clouds parted just enough for moonlight to break through, silver against the mud, guiding his every step homeward. The rancher's cabin stood on the edge of the prairie, weathered wood and stone chimney rising against the night sky. Smoke still curled faintly from the fire he had left smoldering earlier, a sign of warmth in a cold, merciless world. He pushed the door open with his shoulder, cradling her frail body in his arms. The hinges groaned, and the warmth of the hearth reached them instantly. Boots echoed on the wooden floor as he carried her to the rug near the fire. Narration carried the moment like a hymn. What she saw was not gold, nor jewels, nor even freedom. What she saw was flame, and in that flame, a promise that darkness could not win. He laid her down gently, pulling a thick wool blanket over her trembling frame. The firelight painted her pale skin in flickers of orange and gold, shadows dancing across her face. Her eyes darted around the room, shelves of old books, a rifle mounted on the wall, a cross above the mantel, a home built on quiet strength. Her lips parted, voice brittle as dry grass. "Don't send me back." The rancher crouched beside her, his weathered hand brushing damp strands of hair from her cheek. His voice was low, heavy with steel. "No one's laying a hand on you again. Not while I draw breath." Her eyes watered, not just from pain, but from a fragile spark of trust trying to take root. She clutched the blanket tighter, like it was armor. He stood, grabbed a kettle from the hearth, poured steaming water into a tin cup. Kneeling again, he held it to her lips. She sipped, each swallow shaky but alive. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, but inside, warmth pressed against the cold like a shield. Narration whispered, almost tender. The fire wasn't just wood burning. It was her first spark of hope. It was the light that told her. She was no longer alone in this fight. The rancher leaned back, eyes fixed on her fragile form. His jaw clenched, a storm brewing in his chest. He had taken in strays before, calves, dogs, wounded birds. But this was a wounded soul, and he knew he couldn't let her slip away. Morning came slow across the plains, pale light crawling over the horizon. At the cabin, smoke rose steady from the chimney, but inside the walls, unease lingered like a shadow. The girl slept by the fire, face softened by warmth, though her wrists still bore the angry red marks of rope. Far off in town, her stepfather's boots clattered on the saloon floor. His voice, sharp and slurred with whiskey, carried through the smoke-filled room. "She's gone. Someone's hiding her." Men laughed nervously, but his eyes cut through them like knives. He slammed a glass down, spilling liquor. "Old Fool's Ranch ain't but a mile from where I left her. I'll drag her out if I have to." Narration dropped low, heavy with foreboding. Some men carry fire in their hearts. Not the fire that warms, but the kind that burns all it touches. By dusk, tracks led him across the prairie. His boots crunched dry soil as he spat into the dirt, lantern swinging in his hand. He stopped at the ranch gate, eyes narrowing at the glow in the cabin windows. Inside, the rancher sensed him before he knocked. He set his cup down, stood, and reached for the shotgun resting against the mantel. A fist pounded against the door. "Open up, old man. She's mine." The girl stirred, terror flashing in her eyes. "Please!" "Don't let him take me." The rancher's voice was low, steady as stone. "Stay here." "Don't move!" He stepped outside, lantern light spilling over the porch. The stepfather stood in the dirt, face twisted in rage, whiskey dripping off his words. "You hand her over or I'll tear this place down." The rancher raised the shotgun, barrel gleaming in the dim light. "Not tonight. Not ever again." For a long moment only the wind spoke, rattling the dry grass. The outlaw's eyes flicked to the shotgun, then back to the man holding it. His jaw clenched, but he stepped back, spitting into the dust. "This ain't over," he growled, before vanishing into the night. Narration lingered like smoke. Evil retreats when faced with strength, but it always circles back, hungrier than before. The rancher lowered the gun, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond his fence line. He knew this was only the beginning. Dawn broke with a crimson edge, painting the plains in a warning glow. The rancher saddled his horse in silence, his weathered hands firm on the reins. Behind him, the young woman lingered in the doorway of the cabin, blanket draped around her shoulders, eyes wide but resolute. He spoke without turning. "We ride to town. Sheriff needs to hear this." She nodded faintly, clutching the blanket tighter. Her body trembled not from cold, but from the thought of facing the world again. The trail was long and silent. The prairie wind carried only the sound of hooves striking dry earth. Dust rose around them like ghosts of the night before. When they reached the sheriff's office, lanterns still burned in the windows. The rancher dismounted, helped her down, and guided her inside. The sheriff looked up from his desk, eyes tired but sharp. He was a man worn by the burden of holding order in a lawless town. His brow furrowed at the sight of the girl. "What's this?" The rancher's voice was gravel, steady. "She was left to die. Tied in a barn like cattle. Her stepfather did it." The sheriff's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, voice low. "Is this true, miss?" Her hands shook as she lifted the blanket to show her wrists, raw, cut, scarred. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He'll kill me if I go back." The sheriff stood, slow and deliberate. He set his hat on his head and reached for his badge, pinning it firm on his chest. His voice carried weight. "You're safe here, miss. By law. And by God's word." Narration swept in, heavy with solemn hope. Justice in the West was a fragile thing, a badge of tin against a world of iron fists. But sometimes even the faintest light was enough to scatter the dark. The sheriff looked to the rancher, eyes grim. "This won't end quiet. He'll come back, but he won't face you alone." The girl closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks, not from fear, but from the first taste of something she had never truly known. Protection. The rancher placed a hand on her shoulder. "You hear that? You're not alone anymore." Outside, the sun climbed higher, but shadows still waited on the horizon.